How you doing, everyone? This is Matthias Atva from Direct Dreadnought, your Dreadnought PS4 replay guy. And this is the RGM 79C Jim Kai. This is the Robot Gundam mass production type released Universal Century Year 79 Type C grunt mech for the Earth Federation. And this is our first replay for Space Combat and Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2. Now, I did want to start what's called Gundam Sunday on my channel, and I am going to release another Gundam video tomorrow, and that is going to be the RGM 79 FD in ground combat, which was the mobile suit featured in my very first video. But I was having a hard time in space combat, and I realized that I wasn't getting any good mobile suits for space in the mid to low tier of the game, and I really didn't have an excellent space-based version replay for GBO2 until today. So I did misspeak in my first video. You can obtain the Grunt Mech mobile suits, which are my favorite mobile suits in the Gundam series, and I'll tell you why in a little while. But I realized you could spend cash. There is two types of currency in the game. Those are tokens and DP cash. And DP cash are like research credits in Dreadnought, or I guess you could say just credits in general, where tokens are rewarded for completing daily contracts or missions or other types of scenarios and missions in the game. And when you get these bonus tokens, that's where you get your supply drops, and you can average probably about one supply drop a day. So, and a little more on supply drops later, because I have been pretty lucky with my supply drops, and I'm very happy so far, and I'll tell you why in a bit. However, I did start talking about it, and I really didn't finish it because I was all over the place in my first video, and the reason why is because when it comes to the subject of Universal Century Gundam, I will have a complete nerdgasm on you, because the Japanese went to town when they made this series, and this series is chock full of technical readouts and information, and it's a great story, and it's really captivating and sucks you in, not just story-wise but technical-wise. And of course, Bandai Namco released many models, and they are excellent models. They're all snap-together models with polycap joints, fully posable, and really cheap compared to some of the other models out there. And I have quite an extensive collection of models in the Universal Century timeline, especially for grunt mechs. And I will go into a showcase of some of the models I've put together over the years in the 1/44 scale, and I will probably also release a little lore and backstory to Gundam. And what's great about the Universal Century timeline and the war opera sci-fi genre in general is that by telling you the history and the various series and movies that go into Universal Century Gundam, I really won't be spoiling any of it for you, because the overarching theme, events, history, and timeline of Gundam really doesn't spoil or ruin anything, because what makes the series great, it is particularly focused on the characters, very character driven. And in all the series, one of the common themes they have in the Universal Century Gundam timeline is that this war or these conflicts are going on in the background, and it's really the characters and their twists and their lives and their surprises that really the series focuses on. So none of the information that I'll release will spoil any of the great acting, voice acting, storylines, and character-driven content of any of the Gundam movies or television anime series. Alright, so as I was saying in my first video, why giant robots in Gundam? Well, the answer is very simple. There is an Earth Federation, and it's a one-world government, and it's particularly corrupt, and just like its main antagonist, we have an organization that's really rotten at the top with a bunch of really good people at the bottom. And space fighters and in the atmosphere, aerospace fighters still have a purpose, but it was quickly found by all sides that space fighters just don't do it in space. They're really bad for the pilot, they're really frail, and they actually lack mobility. You think jet fighters are really fast in atmosphere, but in space, really the name of the game isn't speed in a straight line where you're very predictable and easy to shoot down. The name of the game is mobility, and being able to survive asteroid fields, wreckage fields, being able to survive stray fire or concentrated fire on you. So it's quickly found out that space fighters are no good and are easily killed and are pretty much death traps in this universe. Now, the main antagonist, the Principality of Zeon, as I mentioned before, is the cluster of colonies in the gravitational side 3 of Earth, and they decide to claim their independence most violently, and it started out by being led by a man named Zeon Zumdaiken, and he was actually a pacifist and predicted the emergence of new types, which are, once humans leave gravity, some of them develop ESP psychic powers, and he also predicted that space noids would become independent of Earth noids, which are what you call people born in space as opposed to people born on the Earth. He was assassinated, and a dictatorial fascist family called the Zombies took over, and Zeonic Company and the Zeman Company, which were both construction robot manufacturers in space, sided with the Zeon against the Earth Federation. And the Earth Federation were using fighters, and fighters really weren't very good, so the Earth Federation fleet decided to focus on battleship and destroyer type craft to maintain law and order in the solar system. And the Zeon did the same, but one of the Zeon family members, Cecilia Zabi, decided to use construction robots in her mobile suit special forces teams, and it was quickly discovered that these mobile suits are very mobile, very armored, and can carry a lot of firepower. The smallest weapon in the Gundam universe, the smallest primary weapon, is the 90mm quote-unquote machine gun. It's really an automatic tank cannon, and it's quite vicious, and the weapons just scale up from there. And at the Battle of Loom, it was proven that mobile suits were the superior strike craft and were here to stay. And mobile suits also did well on Earth and did well in special operations missions, and it was quickly discovered that they were the way to go. So the construction companies of Zeman and Zeonic made the first mobile suits, and they decimated the Earth Federation fleet in close combat, where they should have had the advantage against the numerically smaller fleet of the Zeon. The Zeon won the space battles at the beginning of the war and then invaded Earth. Meanwhile, the Earth Federation responded by making the gun cannon, which was the Model 77. Now, the Earth Federation named their mobile suits on the year that they were released in the Universal Century, which is the calendar that they use in the Gundam Universal Century timeline. And they first started out with the long-range gun cannon robot. It was Model 77, and it was a great support unit, but it was not a response to the fast-moving Zeon mobile suits. So then the Earth Federation developed the RX project and made a really kick-butt robot out of a special kind of titanium-based alloy that can only be produced on the moon. And this was a general-purpose robot, and it really kicked butt, and it was the RX-78 Gundam. Now, when the Gundam was released during the 1-year war, it kicked a lot of butt and had a great pilot. The problem is it could only be in one place at one time, so the Earth Federation quickly mass-produced the RX-77 in the year Universal Century 79. That's where we get the RGM-79 series, the Robot Gundam Mass Production Type, released year 79. I love the GM. It is the ultimate grunt mech. I really like grunts and normal characters in the Gundam universe. Sure, the prototype and super overpowered mechs and superhero new type ESP guys are pretty cool, but what captivated me about the story is the soldiers on both sides, how they were just common characters, either brought into the war by happenstance or drafted or for revenge for whatever the other side did. And both sides did so much damage in the 1 year war and after that it was very captivating for these characters. And I love the normal support characters in these shows and movies for the Universal Century timeline. And I love the grunt mechs. Now, the normal prototype super mobile suits, mobile armors, those are called Valiant type models in this universe. And the mass production type models are any mobile suit that had a production run of 12 or more units. The RGM-79 was the basic response to Zeon's mobile suits, and it was meant to be a watered-down version of the Gundam, which could give pilots very good mobility, decent protection, and a scaled-down beam weapon or heavy machine gun. And it did very well. The Federation wound up winning the 1 year war because they used weight of numbers and pilot survivability. So their pilots, by the end of the 1 year war at the Battle of Abaoku, were very experienced. Even though they lost mobile suits all the time, the pilots usually bailed out and just got another. Where Zeon were losing its ace pilots, even though some of them were crazy and awesome and shot down mobile suits in the hundreds. Eventually they would get unlucky and die, and they had a bunch of rookie pilots piloting these over-engineered mobile suits, much like Germans in World War II with Tiger tanks and everything. There just wasn't enough of these good mobile suits to go around, and the Federation won the war, not with the Gundam, but with the GM, the humble GM-79. The GMs had a production run of about 1,024 units, and then they had many variants, many unbelievable variants. They had ground variants, they had the ground type GMs, cold district type GMs, GM cannons, gun cannons, gun tanks. The GMs had many types of units in space. You had the ground type command unit, the sniper type, the GM space command unit, and each of those had a production run of between maybe 12 or 144 models, but the main GM is what won the war for the Federation. The GM Kai took all these units that were fighting on all these fronts and decided to make a streamlined, easily mass-produced mobile suit to use in garrison and frontline forces at the end of the 1 year war. And later, when the survivors or the remnants of Zeon came back in their many attempts to win freedom for Side 3 and all Space Noids in general, it was the GM Kai that held the line against whatever Zeon or Neo Zeon could put forth to challenge the Earth Federation. And the GM Kai was considered the pinnacle and the most basic, refined grunt mech, the true successor to the original RGM-79 GM. And it served from late Universal Century Year 79 into Universal Century Year 85, and it was the main protagonist grunt mech during Operation Stardust Memory, which was one of my favorite animes of all time. You should really check it out. But anyway, why am I focusing on the GM Kai? Well, I finally have a good space replay, and the problem was I was using the Zaku Mine Layer and the Gym Trainer, which is the starter mech, the starter mobile suit for the game, and I was just being completely outclassed, and I was holding my own, usually getting basically a 1-for-1 kill-death ratio. And then I finally had enough credits to get a good 200-point mobile suit, and my choices were many, but I had to go with the GM Kai because it is just all around a fast, decently armored, well-armed mobile suit with a secondary weapon. Many mobile suits don't have a secondary weapon, and you see in these replays that when my machine gun is reloading, or I should say the automatic cannon 100mm is reloading, I have Vulcans in my head, 75mm Gatling cannons in the head of the mobile suit of the GM Kai, and I use those to pile the damage on so I don't get stuck into nasty close combat with units that are better than me, or try to charge into a unit I can take in close combat that will shoot either giant cannons or sniper rifles at me on my way in. The GM Kai, like most GMs, also has a very big and awesome shield. And once I really got familiar and comfortable with flying in space as opposed to ground, I found out how to position the shield properly to have it absorb as much damage as possible. Now, I'm actually pretty good in ground combat, but once I got the GM Kai and I got a little familiar with the space controls, which are absolutely beautiful, by the way, I hope you're enjoying the replays, because the space combat for this game is the best Gundam space combat to come out of Japan since Mobile Suit Gundam Encounters in Space 2 on the PlayStation 2. And this is, you know, the PS4. So it's been years since game designers for Sony, Namco, and Bandai have been able to make a really good comprehensive Gundam space simulator, and it's just phenomenal. So the GM Kai is really kicking butt here. I go totally ham in these. I get an 8-1 in my first replay here and a 7-1 in my second. And that's why I had to post this video today, and I will be posting a 20-minute replay. It has 2 replays in it for my normal Gundam Sunday tomorrow, and that will be the RGM-79FD in ground combat again. But I did want to showcase the awesome space combat in Gundam Battle Operation 2. And you see that the GM Kai is really suited for me. I don't like the slow-moving Zaku's, even though I do love their designs, and I love all the mass production grunt mechs in Gundam. But I've always been a fan of the GM. My favorite mobile suit of all time is the GM Sniper 2. I am a huge fan of the GM 79 successor, the Jagan, which was featured in Char's Counterattack and all the animes going forward, including Gundam Unicorn, which is a phenomenal series. You really should watch it. But I just wanted to go into a little bit of the background for Gundam and why I like the standard issue mass production mechs in the Gundam universe. Also, remember, they're called mobile suits. And I also got a awesome loot drop. Besides getting really good loot drops for getting all 3 levels of the RGM-79FD, which is one of my favorite GMs for ground combat, I got lucky, and in my drop today I got the RGM-79 SP2, the GM Sniper 2, but it's only the ground variant, and that's okay. I'll have to wait a little longer to get the space variant, but I was so happy today to have these 2 replays play out the way they did, and finally come into my own in space combat, not being constantly outclassed by better mobile suits, and being able to do that without a loot drop, and then getting my daily loot drop for free, the ground version of my favorite mobile suit of all time in the Gundam series. So I was pretty stoked and just had to release this video today. So we'll be talking more about Gundam lore in the next video tomorrow, and next weekend for Gundam Sunday we'll be taking a look at the other side in the Gundam universe, the dreaded Zeon, and we'll be piloting the MS-6 HV, 6th mobile suit to be produced by the Zeonic Company, the Zaku Heavy Arms ground combat type with missile launchers on the legs. And it's a really, really awesome mobile suit, and I do quite well with it, and we'll be trying to feature as many mobile suits as we can in this series. This is not Gundam Sunday, it's kind of a Gundam Saturday, but I hope you enjoyed the space combat. I know I certainly did, and this is exactly what I wanted out of the game, but we will be returning to ground combat tomorrow with some more lore and history for Universal Century Gundam. If you at all like Gundam, you should be playing this game because it has every conceivable mobile suit from the Universal Century timeline in it. We're talking hundreds of mobile suits. It's really, really good. The gameplay is great. If you're not familiar with the gameplay or history of Gundam, you should probably just check out the anime, see if you like it. And even if you don't like the Gundam shows and movies, if you like space combat and sci-fi, this free-to-play game is probably for you. Well, we'll have more Dreadnought content coming up this week, and we'll be checking out more of Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2 every Sunday on the Direct Dreadnought channel. Well, that's it from me for now, and I'll see you soon in Sinley Bay.